So good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Madison. I'm George Hidalgo, Club President, and thank you for joining us today. Let's open our meeting by reciting the four-way plus test of the things we think, say, or do. So number one, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And as you know, we added the plus, which is will be fun for all concerned. It's important that we have fun this year, and especially is more critical now with this pandemic that we're going through. So let's go to our opening music, and let's direct our attention to Casey Okers, who will play "This Land Is Your Land." Okay, thank you very much, Casey. So my philanthropy message today is about birthday contributions. Now, when members celebrate their birthdays, they're encouraged to go ahead and provide a message, which could be a quote or it could be some, very inspirational comment, whatever it may be. But it does give members an opportunity to provide a gift to the Madison Rotary Foundation. And as you know, if you round up to $100, that roundup difference goes to the Synergy Scholarship Fund. So again, the birthday contribution is one of the four priorities of giving for club members set by club leaders. And it helps us serve since the contributions support our community. And one of the things don't want to go into Bible quotes and so forth, but I remember when I joined Rotary and I found out about this birthday gift, and I said, well, I'm used to getting gifts for my birthday. What am I donating to Rotary? But I think what we have to remember is the saying that the more you give, the more you receive. I mean, if you think about being charitable and think about the Bible or whatever your belief may be, it's important. You get more from giving than you do from receiving. So the birthday fundraising effort was started by past President Melanie Ramey 23 years ago and has generated over $560,000 for our foundation. So almost $500,000 have been donated since we started this birthday fundraising effort. And that's truly fantastic to see that type of support for our community through the birthday gifts. And we've received between $20,000 to $24,000 a year in birthday contributions on a regular basis. If you remember, we had a quiz probably about 3 or 4 meetings ago where we came up with this past year, we donated $20,000 in birthday gifts and then $7,000 of the roundup that went to the Synergy Scholarship Fund. So I'd like to have us conduct a quick quiz about the birthday gifts. Now, in the initial years when Melanie Ramey kicked it off as the club president, we started off with 75 participation of members giving for the birthday gift. So the quiz question is, and you can use the chat feature obviously to provide your answer, is what percent of members contributed on their birthday during the most recent Rotary year? Now, the member responses closest to the actual percentage will be our winner, and they'll receive a special certificate of excellence and a photo of Paul Harris when we get back to in-person meetings. So we'll go on to announcements as you think about it, and most of you don't know what the answer is, but we'll be able to provide membership that information. Again, we did start up with 75 participation, so ask yourself, have we increased or have we decreased, and by how much over a 23-year time period? Let me go on to committee reports. Facebook group is the first thing that's important to remind our members of. So as we continue working, keeping members connected during the pandemic, I want to remind everyone that we do have a private Facebook group that was set up, and we actually have 59 members that have currently signed up, and I encourage others to join this group. So it's only for Rotarians, and basically it will show pop-up events where a Rotarian will invite other members to an informal event for those interested in meeting in person. Obviously, how do we connect? It's a very challenging time for everyone, and this Facebook group is an opportunity for us to do that. So one example we can cite is Hailey Salsa Miller and Charles McLymans are meeting tonight at the Hop House's new location in Fitchburg, starting at 4:30 p.m. So you can go on Facebook and say if you're joining them or whatever it may be, or you can set up an event yourself through the Facebook group and let your fellow Rotarians know about it. So we encourage you to post any pop-up event. So, for example, Susan Schmitz, I heard that you've had events at your in your driveway where other people come over. I think Mary Collard told me that you went over to your house and actually sat in your driveway and had some wine or hors d'oeuvres. So, hey, while the weather's nice, I mean, this is a perfect time to do those type of things. So invite people to your driveway. Believe it or not, that's all right. You can do that. And tell them to bring a chair and their favorite beverage and enjoy some time with other Rotarians who live near you. So the Facebook group can also be used for Rotary members to invite others and volunteer opportunities also. Suggest a great book, a great movie. So again, an opportunity for us to stay connected during this pandemic. So with a little effort, we can keep our connections on to a smaller scale in terms of 10 people or 4 people, whatever it may be, and yet follow, the county's guidelines to stay healthy. So you can ask the Rotary office to send you an invite or look for us on Facebook if you're not familiar with how do you join the group on Facebook. For those that are a little bit familiar with Facebook, search for the Rotary Club of Madison group, Connect, Grow, and Serve, and you can look at more ways to expand your network and connect with fellow Rotarians. Next announcement is guests at live stream meetings. So we have 2 guests in attendance at today's live stream meeting. We welcome Regina Milner and Mary O'Brien, who are joining us to get a behind-the-scenes view of how our live stream meetings work here at Pearson Engineering Studios. So if you'd like to sign up for one of our upcoming live stream meetings to attend and have lunch with us, contact the Rotary office and they can get you scheduled. We wear face masks except during lunch, and we're at the podium, and there is room for us to stay at least 6 feet apart. So if you're looking at how we be able to live stream these meetings and make it happen, it's a unique setup, and you're free to join us for lunch. Next announcement, University of Wisconsin Rotaract. So Alex Catania is chairing our UW Rotaract Advisory Committee this fall, and it's getting started online with this fall semester. As you know, UW has had its challenges with quarantines and so forth, and the spike in Dane County is kind of being attributed to UW-Madison and all the students coming back. So they have created a short 2.5-minute promotional video to encourage other students to join. So we're going to show the video because it will help Rotarians better understand what the students are highlighting about their club. So let's take a look.
Each month, we hold exciting speaker events with a Madison area Rotarian and business professional to hear about their career path and any advice they may have for us students early on in our careers. These speakers come from a wide range of industries, and this semester these events will still be held using Zoom.
Hi everyone, this semester we're really hoping to make the best out of a not-so-fun situation. Right now for our virtual socials, we are thinking of doing some Jackbox TV and playing some trivia. However, we're always open to new ideas if anybody comes up with anything.
This semester, Rotaract is offering an opportunity for our members to fill out a Google Doc and then be paired with a Rotarian who has professional experience within the field of their interest.
Hey guys, I'm Vishal. I'm the Director of Service of this club. So basically, with respect to service, we have a specific benefactor every semester, and most of our service events are catered towards an organization. For example, we've had Porch Light to help the homeless population. We've had One City Schools to help education, and we've had many more throughout the semesters of this club. And for those activities, we either do fundraisers or we go specifically to that organization and directly volunteer with them. And apart from that, we do park cleanups, we do volunteering at food pantries, so just a bunch of local service opportunities in Madison as well.
Rotary service exceeds the boundaries of the local community. We've had the honor to partner with and support organizations on an international level. During the spring semester of 2019, Rotary set out to raise books for a library being constructed in the Gambia. Through the power of our members and multiple book drives, Rotary raised over 10,000 books.
My favorite thing about Rotaract is the connections that you make as a member of the org with fellow org members who are very like-minded and that they care about service and leadership, which is really what Rotaract is at its core, and the connections you make with Rotary members who are professionals in the Madison community that speak at all of our meetings, who are 100% willing and able to help you with anything you need personally or professionally, and are very accessible to Rotaract members.
Okay, so Alex tells me that Rotaract students would welcome Rotarians to join any of their monthly Zoom meetings. So I believe they had a meeting a couple nights ago at 7 o'clock at night. So right now they're looking at planning one meeting per month. So contact the Rotary office if you'd like to receive information on their monthly meetings. But on to birthdays. Well, we have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor, wisdom that complements Rotary's mission. And we also encourage members, again, to make an age-appropriate gift to the Madison Rotary Foundation, rounded to $100 for our Club Synergy Scholarship Fund. So when you look at it, remember someone like Lou, who's 96, so 96 goes to the foundation, $4 goes to the Synergy Scholarship Fund. Someone like a youngster like Sarah Bess, who's 21 years old, 21 goes to the birthday, and then 79 goes to the Synergy Scholarship. So it kind of gives you a really good understanding of where the funds go. So let me start off with September 13th, Tom DeChant. September 15th, Tammy Thayer. September 16th, Louis Badreddine. September 16th, Mike Engelberger. September 17th, Jim Taylor, who shares that he was impressed with the interview of Dr. Vivek Murthy in the August issue of the Rotarian magazine. He highlighted the impact of loneliness and offered some ways to combat it. And it takes only caring, listening, and volunteering. September 18th, Nate Babel. September 18th, Majid Sarmadi, who says he would like to ask everyone to pray for unity and peace in our country and in the world. So thanks to our celebrants for the contributions to the Madison Rotary Foundation. Please join me in wishing them a happy birthday. Elaine Mishler will play Happy Birthday on the pump organ. So thank you, Elaine. So let's go back to that question I originally asked about birthday contributions. And sounds like we have a winner, someone that came pretty close. I heard that Darren Harris came in at 65, and then Julie Swenson was 60. Do we have anyone that came closer than that? Okay, so sounds like Julie Swenson, you've won the certificate and also the opportunity to take a picture of yourself with Paul Harris. And basically what we've got up on the screen is how the percentages have gone from when they started in Melanie's term to where we are now. So last year we were at 55%. And basically, again, we do have an opportunity when you get that pink sheet that requests a birthday gift, take a few minutes to read it and how that helps serve our community when you make a gift. Again, you get more from giving than you do from receiving. So thank you very much. Next item is a reminder of the October 1 deadline for the nomination for this year's annual Rotary Swarzinski Award. You can find more details in Friday's newsletter along with a link to the nomination form. As you know, I always have a featured member in the news. So this week's featured member in the news is Deb Archer. She's been with our club since 1995 and has been active on our community grants welcoming, and youth awards committee. So definitely a very active participant in our Rotary Club. And you probably read in last week's local news that Deb Archer will be retiring at the end of the year after serving over a quarter of a century as Destination Madison CEO and president. So during her tenure, she had the oversight of the formation of the Madison Area Sports Commission. She helped stage Bucky on Parade, and she secured contracts for Ironman and CrossFit in Madison. So it's amazing the amount of things that Deb Archer has brought to our community and made Madison such a strong city in the Midwest. She also worked to keep the WIA boys basketball in Madison. Deb said it was a privilege to share her love for Madison with guests from around the world, and we wish her all the best in her retirement. So I'm looking forward. I actually contacted Deb and I said that I'm very looking much forward to her involvement in more of our Rotary activities because she does care a great deal of the community. So thank you very much, Deb. The other members of the news that will appear in the news later that I'd like to highlight. So Mike Gosler was quoted in an article titled Legal HR Headaches of COVID-19, Deciding How and When to Bring Employees Working Remotely Back to the Office. As you know, for some of the companies, I think Epic was recently in the news because they were trying to bring their employees back, and there was a lot of pushback on that. So that's in business in September 20. Joe Luinas was quoted in an article titled Concerts from the Car, Live at Breeze Stevens Chamber Orchestra Plays Pops. So that was a 9/2 TCT. Kristen Schmidt was pictured and quoted in Business Magazine's column, Street Smarts. What's your favorite first day of school memory? September 20. Susan Schmitz was quoted in an article about Madison Bike Week 2020, which is, I believe, is this week. And that's the Wisconsin State Journal, 9/14. Congratulations to Jeff Tubbs, who has recently been promoted to Executive Vice President at Findorf Construction. That's in Business, September 20. And then Mark Westover was pictured in an article about how the YMCA of Dane County met the COVID-19 challenge head on. That's in Business Magazine, September 20. And I think I like to read this from the podium because it's important for all of us to realize that we as Rotarians play a vital role in the community. Our opinions, our actions, our contributions are valued by our Madison community. So don't forget that we are part of a phenomenal organization. So thank you to our fellow Rotarians for playing a significant leadership role in the community. So on to our program. So we want members to see who our current board members are this year. So we're continuing to ask one of our board members to introduce a speaker each month. This month, board member Sarah Detien will introduce our speaker. Sarah is in her second of a 2-year term on our club board. Sarah joined our Rotary Club in 2007 and is Director of Development at the Wisconsin Foundation Alumni Association. Sarah also served as our chair of a program committee for 2 years. She will now introduce our speaker. Sarah?
Today's speaker is Amy Gilman, who has been director of the Chazen Museum at the University of Wisconsin-Madison since September of 2017. During her tenure, she has overseen initiatives such as staff restructuring and expansion, a drastic increase in the museum's open hours, the addition of an on-site café, and diversified acquisitions. The Chazen has also had to reevaluate how it engages with its audiences both in person and virtually during the COVID-19 pandemic. Amy earned her doctorate in art history at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, a master's degree of fine arts in photography from Columbia College in Chicago, and a bachelor's degree in performance studies from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. Today, she's going to discuss how the museum pivoted during this time, and she will tell us about plans to continue the museum's progress in the years ahead. If you have questions for Amy, please use the chat function on YouTube, and President George will select questions from the chat. Let's welcome Amy Gilman to our podium. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me today. I'm delighted to be here. I'm sorry we are not all together at the hotel. And I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I'm doing this all correctly. As you heard, my name is Amy Gilman, and I am the director at the Chazen Museum of Art here on the campus of UW-Madison, right at the intersection of campus and community. In fact, the way I tend to describe the museum is that we literally serve as a gateway to campus because the two buildings, now connected by a bridge, are a point where many people, community members and students engage and go back and forth, 12,000 people a day during pre-pandemic times, right in front of the museum. And so I've been asked to come and talk to you a little bit today about the museum, about what we have been doing since COVID, and also a little bit about the museum field and sort of where are we going. And then I look forward to hearing your questions. So let me get started here. I'm not clicking. Thank you. Try again. There we go. So, you've heard a little bit about me. I won't rehearse this, but, I came here in September 2017. In fact, last Friday was my 3rd year anniversary of my start at the Chazen. And it feels like it also happened to be, very coincidentally, the 50th anniversary of the founding of the museum. The LVM Art Center was formed in September, officially in September of 1970, when the LVM building opened to the public. When I arrived in 2017, I was the first director in 33 years. Many of you probably knew, or probably still know, my predecessor, Russell Panchenko, who did a remarkable job over that period of transforming the museum from a smaller and embedded within a single building and really sort of facing the art history departments and the art departments, and really grew the collection and grew its presence on campus and in the community to the point where we are now the largest collecting institution in the Big Ten, with the addition of the Chazen building, and also that we have over 22,000 objects and consistently over 100,000 visitors a year. Now, one of the side effects that I discovered when I came here was that although the museum had doubled in size prior to the expansion was completed in 2011, is that the staffing had actually remained totally level. There had not been a proportionate increase in the staffing, and that was one of the things that I'll talk to you about today, that I was really sort of challenged to ensure that we could actually be, shall we say, really serving our public. But to talk to you a little bit about what we've accomplished in the last 3 years, I do want to be very cognizant that I am talking about pre-pandemic, because as we've all had to pivot, I'll also get into what we have had to do to continue to serve our mission during this really difficult period. You will probably remember we had great regional and local PR about this, that we became the most open museum in the United States in September of last year. We had open hours 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We had changed the museum's retail into a retail and coffee shop, and we had really expanded our reach. And we really had been on track in March to almost double the museum's annual attendance, if you will. We had managed to increase the number of people on staff by 30%. And there's a number of other accomplishments that we have managed to do during this time, some of which I think are particularly telling. And this one here, that basically, even with reducing the retail space by 4/5, we were on track to be consistent with the amount of money that we had made in prior years on the retail. And that right there is really due to outstanding pivoting on the amount of retail that we had. And then finally, over the last 3 years, we really focused on stewarding donors, both people who have been connected with us and really connecting with new donors, and really leveling up the donor pyramid. This is, from my perspective, one of the more important visuals that you could have. So let's just say for a second that the donor pyramid looks like this, and your largest donation in a given year sits up here. And then at the bottom of the period, the base, right, that gives you all your stability, is the many, many people who give you very smaller donations. What you want is to say your 100th gift is not the one that's down here. You want your 100th gift to be somewhere in the middle, and you want it to get closer and closer and closer to your top gift, right? So that's when you know that you're really leveling up, if you will. In addition to that, pre-pandemic, we've really increased our engagement with campus, and these are two graphs here that you can see that in very, very stark detail. The blue chart is the number of engagements in the prior year, 2018, 2019, and the orange bar is 1920, and our sort of numbers as of mid-March when we closed down. And you can see that even with the university tours and with engagements with the museum's print study room, we had really dramatically increased. So what have we been doing since the pivot? So like all of you, right, basically third week in March, right, we all started working from home. We had actually been preparing for a couple of weeks. I started thinking about this early. I actually spent several weeks positive that I was being paranoid about the pandemic, that that something was going to happen and things were going to resolve. But in the meantime, I followed my instincts about it and asked the team to start preparing plans for if we had to shut down for a short period of time. I laugh about it now because short period of time in my mind was like, we might have to shut down for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks, right? Or maybe a month. And so I asked everybody to prepare, even for staff who were very forward facing. What would we be doing if we were all working remotely? And some of the things that we've done since then, including, and I won't go through the specific list here verbally, but probably the most important investment we made during this entire period was a very deep investment in professional development. We asked everybody to, for those people who could continue their work just directly, everybody moved home. And we asked for everybody to do some thinking about what kinds of training would you like right now? What kinds of things would help you be better at your job? Let's invest in those things for however long we're going to be in this situation so that you are continuing to do meaningful work for the museum and the university during this time. And that, I think, will be an investment that's going to have a really long tail on it, right? It kept staff engaged. It kept people connected during this very difficult time. But it also means that people have been doing a lot of thinking about their jobs. And that actually gets us into, like, what are we going to do going forward? Some of you may have already discovered some of our online programming, and I hope that you will engage with us, if you have not already, with our kind of happy hour, which happens on Wednesdays, and Family Fridays. And both of this involves videos, and Family Fridays involves a video that walks you through an art activity that's connected to an object in the museum's collection. And those art activities are based on entirely things that you might be able to find in your house, right? So you don't have to go out and get special art things, etc., to do these kinds of things. And we're going to be continuing to do more and more of that. But I was also asked to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in the field of museums in general. And here, as you might predict, and maybe this is true in your own sector, things are very complex, right? The Alliance of American Museums, which really looks at about 4,000 museums, not just art museums around the country, predicts that it is possible that at least 30% of museums in this country may not survive this period. And that actually tells you that they were probably pretty precarious to begin with. And precarious just could mean that they could go on forever as long as something like this doesn't happen, right? But that really probably meant that they were surviving on a yearly basis, or on an annual or even on a monthly basis, based on donations being consistent at a specific level. That is not a great place for us as a sector to be in. It's difficult to watch this happen. We've also watched significant layoffs across the sector. Interestingly, not as many of the Midwestern museums have actually done as many of the layoffs as you've seen on the coasts. I don't know precisely why. Could be related to endowment or other choices. And these kinds of things are going to have really, really long effects on museums as a field. And in addition to that, we're seeing tremendous upheaval at the director level. This had already been true in the sector over the last 10 years. There was a generation of directors who were getting ready to retire or had been retiring. So there was a lot of movement in the field already. And that movement is just increasing, right? There's a number of directors who, are right at retirement age and got into COVID and thought, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Like, I'm not ready to do this. You've also seen a lot of pressure related to both employees and people from outside museums really beginning to talk about museums and our relationship to race, our relationship to our staff, and the people who make all the work that we do possible. You've seen a dramatic uptick in unionizing efforts at specific museums. And so this is really like there's all of this kind of fervent activity happening. And you layer one more thing on top of that, which is the Black Lives Matter and civil unrest, and the sort of how are museums going to respond in real time to this, but also in the long term, and how is it going to change that? So since I've been here for 3 years, I've been doing a lot of reflecting, right? I've been reflecting on the fact that we started as a museum in the fall of 1970, only 3 weeks after the bombing at Sterling Hall, right? We started in the midst of what, until this year, I would have absolutely argued was the most divisive and difficult periods that probably this country had faced in the late 20th century, and certainly one of the most talked about and monumental for Madison and the university. And how interesting that we as a museum are turning 50 during a time of also upheaval and difficulty. And what does this mean for the Chazen? What does it mean for our purpose? How are we going to serve our public while we are closed? And while we were the first museum in Madison to reopen in July, we are now closed again for a period while the caseload in Dane County and in Madison goes up. And so I've been really preoccupied with this question about how are we going to go forward? Because that, to me, is the question we must be asking. In the beginning of the pandemic, I, like probably many of you, had actually been talking about, like, okay, how do we get back to where we were, right? How can we get back to what we were doing at the end of February, right? I had this momentum, and we were open all these hours, and we had all this going on, and things have changed, and you don't get to just go backwards, right? This time is going to affect us. And so we're trying to make some choices about what it is that we're going to be doing going forward. This is the foundation of our strategic plan as it stood in spring of 2018. So we've been working with this, aligning our resources, which is just really being thoughtful about how we use the resources that we have available. How do we ensure our sustainability over time? And how do we increase our relevance to all of our communities? Now, where do we go from here? Right? One of the things that we really want to make sure is that we're not going backwards, right? We want to learn about what we're going to do. What have we learned since the pandemic started that we actually don't want to stop doing? How have we been connecting with our constituencies in ways that we actually want to find ways to continue? So those strategic objectives still remain completely relevant today, but how we'll realize them will be very different. And immediately, we're really going to focus on some top 3 initiatives that will help us make some decisions. I have also found, and again, perhaps you all have experienced this yourselves, that In some ways, this time feels like it just sort of has blown up everything that we all assumed that we would be doing and all of our priorities. But as crises tend to do, it has also honed, at least my sense of, we have to be very focused on a small number of things that we can do and that we can do well and sustainably in order for us to be able to really make positive choices. And so thinking about accessibility and inclusivity, that had been realized in our minds by this idea of opening the museum in a radical way, of that number of hours, of just inviting people in. So how are we going to do it differently now? How are we going to think about the accessibility to the museum? How are we going to incorporate some of the digital programming that we have been doing when we are able to do live programming again? One of the things I'll mention here is that if you haven't been on the museum's website in a while, you might want to visit us again, because just a couple weeks ago, we launched a new website. And that website is now much more user-friendly. It is very versatile for us on the back end, but it also has a much more robust search function, calendar function. We're able to present a lot of material to you that we were not able to do. We're also going to really think closely about the permanent collection. We need to make very conscious choices about diversifying our collection, and we need to do that very actively. We've also been engaged over this past summer in an evaluation of the LVM building, the original building done by Harry Weiss and Associates, that is actually quite, in my mind, a remarkable building. I love that building. It was barely touched during the building of the Chazen building, and it needs some attention. It needs a new HVAC system. It needs a new roof. It needs some insulation in its walls. It also needs to be sort of rethought, not as something different than what it was originally intended. It was always intended to be this intersection of the Kohler Art Library, the Art History Department, and the museum. But the way that it gets realized in the 21st century and how that building can be used to really create really strong intersections between the three partners in the building is very important, and we're really looking at that very, very closely right now. And finally, there is an initiative that we've started over the summertime called, that's really about supporting teaching and learning at the university. And this is something that I had wanted to start thinking about and doing prior to my, prior to COVID, but it had been lower on my priority list. And then, of course, with the pandemic, and with the uncertainty around teaching and learning and how are we going to be successful doing that, we wanted to find ways of supporting the university, and we're going to do that even more. So this fall, we have piloted a curriculum that is very versatile, can be used entirely virtually, to be connected to objects in the museum's collection and that are on view, that are also connected to themes around the Go Big Read book, Parkland, which if you have not read it yet, I cannot recommend this book enough. It is incredible. You just have to make it through the first 3 chapters, which are some of the most painful chapters I've ever read. But you really get to this idea of resilience and overcoming incredible adversity. And that's something that we really wanted to emphasize with our team. So finally, I wanted to let you know about some of the things that are coming up, because I hope that you will eventually get to join us, right? So right now we're closed, potentially through the 21st. We're taking that on a day-by-day basis. I can't guarantee by the 21st we'll be back open again. When we are able to open, we want you to sign up with us. You can see it on a link at the museum's website. You'll sign up on Eventbrite and come up with a 1-hour window that you can come visit the museum and see some of our new exhibitions. We have some recent acquisitions on view that you can see, things that we've been acquiring since 2018. We have an incredible video installation by an artist, Bill Viola. It's called The Raft. And this video, which is 10 minutes long, is a scene of a group of people, and you can see this here, that is being deluged by water. And I had actually originally decided to bring this here to the museum after the flood in 2018 as a way of really thinking about sort of how climate change is affecting Madison. And now this particular video, which is about human resilience, is even more resonant, and it will be on view this fall as soon as we can open. And we are also really delighted to highlight one of the MFA graduates. Every year we do an exhibition of a single MFA graduate of the university. This was supposed to open last May, and it will open in October this year. So now I want to open it up for questions, and I'm happy to talk to you about anything that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you, Amy. We have a lot of questions here, so and we need more too. So if you've got a question and you're listening in, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'll go ahead and read it. So the first question is from Bob Dindorf. Says, Amy, what will happen to the collections of those museums that close?
Oh, great question. So that is very complex because, as you know, I mean, most museums. Let's just talk about art museums for a second because that's the part I actually know the best. For any university art museum that this goes to, the collection is actually owned by the university. So that would revert to a university governing body to determine whether there is another entity who would take the collection, et cetera. But for most of the museums, they're standalone, right? And they're 501c3s, and they have very specific missions, and people have been donating and acquiring work for those collections for probably decades with the intention of that museum really taking care of them. A couple of things can happen. The first thing, and this is probably the ideal scenario, is that the trustees of those museums would look around and find another museum or several museums that have similar missions, and they would transfer that material to those museums. So those assets would transfer there. And that has happened in the past. This would not be the first time that would happen. But also then it's also possible that the trustees could potentially sell the collection, and then it would get dispersed into probably multiple private collections and maybe some museums. But I know that because trustees have a very specific fiduciary responsibility, the first impulse and the first idea is to see if there is another place. And sometimes it's a place that has the same kind of mission, and someplace it's something that is geographically close that could assume responsibility for that collection into their own space.
Okay, great. This one's on Jesslyn Holler, and she is a new Rotarian, just started with us last week, so it's great that she's involved in providing a really good question. Here it says, hi, Amy. In line with the outreach into the community, have you, are you building relations with area schools, art teachers to support art making / digital programming for youth during virtual learning?
So I'll talk about a couple of things that we've done specifically. And one of the things that I have really cautioned the staff is that we're a pretty small staff, right? We have about 27 people on staff, and we cannot be all things to all people, right? Or all organizations. But what we want to do is make choices about what we do and do them very well. And in the spring, we actually, you may recall in the, I think it was probably in April and May, there was this thing that went around the internet where people were in their own homes. They were taking masterpieces from museum collections, and they were like dressing up like that, and they were doing those things. Well, we worked with, there was a teacher at Madison Public School District who started this with I can't remember if it was second or third grade class. And then we promoted it on our website because they were so fantastic. I mean, they were like amazing. And so we're doing some specific outreach and targeted things like that. We're encouraging teachers to utilize the resources that we've been developing over the summertime. So these videos that we have that really walk you through making, art making, are totally accessible on our website, and anybody can use them. And the very concrete thing we've done is that when it became clear that we were not going to be able to have a big 50th anniversary celebration, right? We were going to have a big party. Right now, just even the concept of a big party sort of makes me nervous. Is that we decided we wanted to put our resources towards something else that would really support the community. And we reached out to 100 Black Men of Madison, and our education department worked with them and said, what do you need that we think the Chazen could actually do for you? And we developed a kit that we put together that had 2 art making activities and printouts of 2 artworks in the museum's permanent collection made by African American artists, and then activities that were specific to those objects, and then all of the materials you would need to do those things, that activities, and all packaged together. And we chose the activities specifically because we were looking also at the school supply lists and knowing that not all families can actually afford the things on the school supply list. And so we put together 1,400 of these kits that are being distributed to many of the MMSD families who are in the greatest need.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is the combination from Darren Harris and Cheryl Cato. It says, how might the Chazen preserve and highlight artwork created as part of the BLM demonstrations?
So there's actually a lot of conversation that's going on about that right now amongst basically all the museums in town. There's, as you all know, Karen Wolf really was the leader in stewarding the murals with downtown and working with the artists specifically for that. We have been involved in conversations about what's happening to those objects, and some of them are objects and some of them are murals. In perpetuity. We also sent out a photographer to make sure that they were well documented. And basically, what we see as some very specific responsibility is to make sure that we are in dialogue with all of our peer partners, because in many ways, in terms of the mission, collecting some of those objects is probably more in line with the Wisconsin Historical Society's mission, and they have been really thoughtfully doing that. But we know that we can be a part of that in a really meaningful way, and so we're in dialogue with all of our colleagues in museums in the area.
Great, thank you. Next question from Ron Luskin, who asks, have you created any virtual tours?
So we have one virtual tour that is on the museum's website that is if you remember, last summer, which feels truly like ages ago, right? There was a great fun exhibition people really loved called In the Studio. And so one of the things that we did this summer was recreate that exhibition virtually and do a video of it that you can actually go through the exhibition, see the works of art, all of that. So that's one thing in particular. We are also in the midst of putting together videos that are introduction to single groups of objects or virtual tours, if you will. And we're trying to be very targeted about that because we actually know that there are faculty, especially who do the same tours again and again every year. This isn't exclusive to UW, but just sort of pointing that out. And we're trying to get some virtual tours that really meet those needs first. But this is an area we're definitely going to be expanding.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is from Neil Farbach, who asked, the Brooklyn Museum is planning to sell art for financial reasons. Would Chazen consider such a move?
No. I mean, so no is the easy answer to this, right? But let me actually highlight that just a little bit, right? Which is that, first of all, in accordance with the the ethics of our sector, as outlined in my case by the Association of Art Museum Directors, is that we are not allowed as institutions to capitalize the artwork that is in our care, right? If you have ever been on a board of a standalone art museum, you know that the collection is not on the books as an asset. It's not depreciated like a building, all of that. Because it is removed from the market, right? It also doesn't depreciate in the same way that a capital asset depreciates. And so we basically see that as separate. That doesn't mean you can't sell things, or deaccession was what they call them, remove it out of the collection. You do that for a variety of reasons. Basically, you are restricted to using the funds that are acquired from that only to acquire other artwork. So it is really only in extraordinary circumstances that museums will resort to selling objects in order to pay operating funds. Because as you can imagine, it's actually there so that you don't, for lack of a better phrase, eat yourself, right? Because we're here to preserve and provide the collection to the public. So we can't sell the collection to pay to be open to the museum. Okay.
Thank you. Next question is from Joyce Bromley, who says, describe the role of the docent program. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Sure.
Never heard that word before.
Docent program. Okay, well then let me explain what a docent program is. So almost every art museum has a volunteer program. Not all of them are volunteer, but most of them are. A volunteer program of what's called docents, people who volunteer who are trained to lead tours of the museum's exhibitions and permanent collection, largely for K through 12, but not exclusively, right? So it could be also for adults, it could be for special interest groups, et cetera. Hello, Joyce, because I know. And that is something that is very long-standing within the field. And in our case, we have this large and really wonderfully active group of docents who provide tours for K through 12 audience throughout the entire academic year.
Next question is tied into that is, how do you keep them busy with little no traffic coming through your facilities?
How do I keep who busy?
The docents busy.
Well, it's challenging. I mean, I think the docents could probably, as a group, speak to this a little bit more. But, right now, what is happening is that, of course, we do not have K through 12 tours. We don't have any tours right now. There are no tours. There will probably not be tours at least through the end of 2020. I don't see a vision in which that's possible. But as we do with our other audiences, what has been happening with the docents is that they are still meeting on a bi-monthly basis, and they're doing readings and discussions and things like that about objects in the collection, about current events, about things that are happening in the sector, and really just maintaining community as we figure out sort of where we're going to go next.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Ron Luskin. It says, describe your relationship with the UW Art History program and the synergies that occur.
So as I mentioned when I was talking about the LVM building, the art history program is, the art department and the art history department are the two departments that are naturally closest to us. And obviously with the art history department, we occupy the same building. We really love working with the art history department. I am so appreciative of the way that they've approached things. They always bring students into the galleries. Every year there is a class that happens at least once that involves using the museum's collection to encourage students to conceive of and plan an exhibition. And in some cases those get realized physically, and in some cases we're just consulting on that. In fact, I'm actually speaking to a university class this afternoon, which is really delving into really exploring not well-known stories within the collection and things like that.
Okay, great. Next question is, have traveling exhibits been extended to accommodate the canceled schedules?
So I will tell you, scheduling is very challenging during this time. So the Bill Viola exhibition, the big video that I was talking about, which, by the way, when we're back open again, I neglected to tell you that single video is like 10 feet by 20 feet in the gallery. So it's enormous. It's larger than life size. That was supposed to be our summer exhibition. And so we pushed that to the fall. We had already paid for traveling for that show, et cetera. We were very fortunate compared to many other museums in that we had not had a lot of other traveling exhibitions on the books that we couldn't shift. So we have not had to back out of contracts yet or do anything like that. We are just trying to be as nimble as possible. We're also taking the approach for spring this year and potentially the fall next year that we're not going to overcommit to exhibitions. That's not a really good use of resources, I don't think, because we really don't know what is going to be happening, and I want to be thoughtful about that. We also do not know yet the level of the state funding cuts and the related university funding cuts. And so until I have a better picture about what this remainder of this academic year will look like, it's very hard for us to commit to anything larger than really focusing on the exhibitions we had in the pipeline and on things that are related to our collection.
Okay. Thank you. Now, so you've spoken about many downsides of the closure of the museum. Is there anything positive?
So I'm sorry that if it came across like it was all weighted on the downside, because I mean, there are days when I'm certain it feels like that for all of us, right? But I do think that there are a number of what I'll call COVID silver linings, right? And one of them I did mention really was this decision to move forward with the pilot project on the curriculum to support faculty and students teaching and learning at the university. And this actually, I think, is going to have a big impact on what we do going forward because we were able to really focus very tightly on it. The other silver lining, and I don't know if this has been your experience as well in your own businesses, in your own lives, is that, we all live really busy lives, right? We all are running on that calendar, and we're flying places and we're doing things, and it's this constant schedule. And this is true of museums too, right? We're like constantly like, what's the next exhibition? What's the next thing? What's this program? And you're just running from week to week to week to week to week. The gift is that everything stopped, right? That never happens. I mean, literally never happens. And so the gift is this thing that I mentioned in the talk, which is we want to restart by making decisions about where we want to go, not where we were, right? We want to acknowledge that. But just with any trauma or major life event, you cannot just wish your way out of it, right? I am a cancer survivor, right? And, the moment you get that diagnosis, you're like, oh man, I wish I could go back to yesterday when I had no idea, right? But for the rest of your life, right? You don't get to be the person who never had that diagnosis. It changes you. And the treatment changes you. And COVID is changing all of us. And I think it is incumbent on us. It's not so much a silver lining. It's actually accepting that it is important that we actually change when we are given the opportunity to do so. And this is one of those opportunities. And I really think that it is incumbent on me as the director of the museum to ensure that the museum continues forward, right? Making choices, acknowledging how we have changed in this time.
Thank you. Final question. This is from Rich Leffler, and I think Bob Dindorf also agrees. It's a great question. So once upon a time, and I'm from New York, so I don't know how to pronounce these words. I'm probably better at the Indian words than this one. The LVM?
The LVM. The LVM.
LVM. Okay. Thank you. Used to host a Sunday afternoon classical concert that was broadcast on WRN post-COVID is such a thing possible again?
Sure. So Sunday Afternoon Live, has continued right up until we shut down, and we have every intention of starting it back up again when we can safely do that in person. We are in conversation about how do we do that, not just in person, but then how do we also incorporate the streaming capabilities that we've learned to use for programming. And so I am totally committed to the classical music programming. I think it's a fantastic partnership with musicians and artists in the community and within UW. And so, I see that coming forward. I do not have a timeline for you about when that might happen. Right. Thank you guys for having me. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks so much. And thank you.
So thank you for the presentation, Amy, and thanks for everyone who attended today's meeting. Let's give her a warm round of applause. And the one thing is, it was fantastic getting all the questions. So she spent as much time answering the questions as during the presentation. So it shows that the members or Rotarians that are on this virtual viewing were really engaged and very interested in the subject. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and we are adjourned.